Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the literary summary for the week. This is Dr. Josh, and this week we're going to be summarizing the Sumerian literary story Enmerkar and the Lord of Aratta. If you remember from the past couple of weeks, Enmerkar is a king of the city of Uruk, and there's this trope where he marches to the city of Aratta to fight against it, to subdue it. In the last 2 weeks, we've looked at one of his warriors, Lugalbanda, who gets sick and has to stay in a mountain cave essentially to die, but the gods heal him, and he makes his way back and helps the army ultimately overcome Aratta. This week, the text is another story about Enmerkar attempting to overthrow Aratta, or to make it subdue itself, or subjugate itself, and the kind of back and forth that goes on. There are a lot of interesting things in this story. A lot of daily datas will probably come out of this, but let's just go through it so we can understand in general the story. So the overview of the text is essentially that Enmerkar seeks to subjugate Aratta. There are 3 challenges that the Lord of Aratta sends back, and this is all done via messenger. And then finally, Enmerkar has ultimate victory, and there's some little interesting tidbits in here. We'll touch on a couple of them. So the story starts sort of setting this early times motif, and this is something that's common in Sumerian and Akkadian literary and magical texts. This early time motif. So in this text, it's before Dilmun existed, which is a place that they did a lot of trade with. And it's sort of a mysterious place, pristine place. We can talk about that later. The text says it was before commerce was practiced, and this is going to play in because this text shows the invention of writing. We've talked about this in another daily data video. But it says, the Lord of Aratta placed on his head the golden crown of Inanna, but he did not please her like the Lord of Kulaba, and Kulaba is Uruk. And so what the story is saying is that both, and this is one of the interesting things about the text and these stories in general, is that both Aratta, the city of Aratta, and Kulaba, Uruk, both of them have the favor to some degree of Inanna, the goddess. And there's this competition sort of back and forth. Whom does she love more? Whom does she favor more? And in this story, Enmerkar says, I want Inanna to favor me over the Lord of Aratta, and I want Aratta to submit to me and to bring me preciosities and things to help build my city and the temple and so forth. So he asks Inanna to do that, and she says, yes, you can. So he sends a messenger to deliver the message, hey, you have to submit to me and bring me a bunch of cool stuff. And the Lord of Aratta has some emotional responses to it, but ultimately says, no way, I challenge you as a rival, answer my challenges. And so there are 3 of them, and it's essentially, it's almost a, if you can solve my challenge, if you can best me in these challenges, then we'll submit. So the first challenge is the Lord of Aratta says, hey, load barley into nets, the things with holes in them. Put them on donkeys and have the barley make it all the way to Aratta, which is a very far distance away in the story, over 7 mountains. Well, the solution, the way that Enmerkar solves this problem, is he soaks the barley and he narrows the holes, the gaps in the nets, and the expanded barley and the narrowed nets makes it so that it stays in the nets and makes it all the way to Aratta. And the pile of barley, the text says, that is created when they open it up and put it in a pile in Aratta, saves the starving people in Aratta because their fields were no longer, they didn't have enough rain, they weren't growing enough food. And so the solution actually saves the starving people that are there in Aratta. Well, that didn't do it for the Lord of Aratta. He says, all right, Challenge number 2, create a scepter that is not made of wood, gold, silver, copper, and a whole bunch of other materials. Basically, make a scepter that from a material that doesn't exist, which seems like a really weird thing to ask. Well, Enmerkar, being the genius that he is, and he gets help from Enki on this, of course. He grinds a substance. There's a broken section there, so we don't know exactly what it is, but he grinds a substance into a liquid form, and through some careful maneuvering, it takes 5 or 10 years for this thing to ultimately take shape, but he ultimately creates this new scepter from an essentially new material that he's made from grinding up other materials into a liquid form and letting it harden. So he sends that scepter on via his messenger, and of course the Lord of Aratta says, "Nah, that doesn't really do it for me. Here's another challenge. I want you to provide a champion to fight one of my champions. But that champion can't be black, white, brown, red, yellow, multicolored. Can't be anything. It can't be any of those colors." And so how do we find a human that fits those characteristics? Well, Enmerkar's solution was to clothe him in a turban and put lion skin on him. And so essentially, it's not any of these other colors. It's because it's not his skin that is that color. It's a different skin that's on him. But at this point, even though he answers the challenge, he gets pretty mad. Enmerkar gets pretty mad. And he tells his messenger, he kind of goes on a rant. Tell him this. And you know what? Tell him this. And tell him this other thing. Well, up to this point, the text is very explicit, goes into some detail to talk about how the messenger memorizes the entirety of the message from one king to the other and repeats it. Back to the original king and then back to the king to whom he's delivering the message. But at this point, the text says that the message was too long, too complex, he couldn't repeat it. And so Enmerkar takes a tablet, takes some clay, pats it into the shape of a tablet, and writes the message on it in cuneiform, and invents writing by doing so. And for those of you, if you haven't seen any of our other videos, if you look down at the bottom of the screen right now, that's cuneiform. 2 lines from the Epic of Gilgamesh. Anyway, not the Epic of Gilgamesh, sorry, Gilgamesh and Huwawa, which is the Sumerian, anyway, it doesn't matter. Sumerian forerunner to part of the Epic of Gilgamesh. So the messenger doesn't repeat. When he takes that tablet, he gets all the way to Aratta, hands the tablet to the king, and tells him, he doesn't repeat the message because he can't. He hands the tablet to the king and says, here it is, read it. And so writing is invented. And there's, of course, debate. We can talk about this later. There's debate about could he read the tablet, could he not read the tablet? Was it, what's the Sumerians a little complex there. Now, the end of the story. Following the tablet being delivered to the Lord of Aratta, Ishkor, the storm god, sends rain in Aratta and waters the fields, and they grow again. And this emboldens, apparently, the Lord of Aratta to say, Inanna hasn't forsaken us. Our champions are going to fight now. So in a broken section, it looks like the champions compete. The end of the story is fragmentary, but Enmerkar is made supreme by Inanna, that much we can see, and Aratta becomes this well-established and abundant place. And if you remember from the end of the Lugalbanda story, the Lugalbanda cycle that we looked at last week, this was one of the things that Inanna said. If you can make them abundant, if you can, take care of it and well-found it, then you'll have victory over it. And this is sort of the motif that continues on, right? So you can see the commonalities in the stories. But this is how the tablet ends. Enmerkar is made supreme by Inanna, just as she said he would be. And but Aratta is not decimated or something. It's this well-established and abundant place. So next week, the last in the 4 Lugalbanda / Enmerkar stories, and it is going to be Enmerkar and Ensukhkashtana. And Ensukhkashtana, and it's an interesting story. A lot of magic, sorcery. It's a pretty cool story. So come back for that next Saturday, and we'll look at the last Enmerkar story in the series. Thanks.